Good afternoon. I'm Sifu Dave Charles from KAJUKENBO Napoli here in Naples, Italy.
And I'm Sifu Steve Miller from beautiful Central Oregon, USA.
Good to see you again, Steve. I just wanted to get together with you today, and I wanted to make a quick video here because we see a lot of videos nowadays and whatnot that talk about how do you choose a martial arts school and that sort of thing. I just did a video about some reflections on violence kind of deal. And I just wanted to ask you a real quick question before you even get started here. And that is, why do so many black belts get their asses kicked?
You mean in a real street fight / violent encounter, sir?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know how many black belts fall victim to uh, not being able to survive a violent encounter, but I know there's been a good number of books written on the subject. I know one author in particular we both enjoy, and he wrote a series of books about how to deal with violence. And you know, I guess I would say rank is less important than skill. Skill beats rank any day of the week. And I think a black belt is a certificate and it's rank around your waist, but it doesn't always equate with skill. It's not always synonymous with skill level. And we have doctors, lawyers, judges, educators. Just because a doctor has a medical certificate on their wall doesn't mean they can cure every disease. Just because a lawyer has a law degree hanging on his wall doesn't mean he can win every court case. Just because a teacher has an educator's certificate displayed in their office doesn't mean they're going to educate every student. Amen.
Amen. Well,
So it's going to be the skill the doctor or the surgeon possesses. It's going to be the skill level that the lawyer possesses and the skill level the teacher possesses. I can just tell you, I've dealt with all three, but the one I want to talk about first is teachers. We both went to Newburgh High School. We both could probably share countless stories of teachers we loved and teachers we didn't like so much. But I'll tell you, the teachers that had the greatest skill level, in my opinion, were the ones that got me to want to come to class more than 1 or 2 days a week and stay there, and keep showing up. And they made learning fun. And then they taught lessons in the classroom that they call it nowadays, what's your takeaway, right? Everyone uses that term. And I have a lot of teachers, well, a fair amount of them over the years, even just through Newburgh High School, where I could say, hey, look, I love that. Even if a couple of teachers, a few of them, found me on Facebook or I found them and we reconnected on Facebook because I went, hey, you were one of the best teachers I had in high school. They really cared. They cared about my learning and about me as an individual, and they cared about what they were teaching. They were passionate, you know? And I think that's going to be the first ingredient that a teacher needs to be able to connect with a student and drive a lesson home. I mean, the teacher that makes learning the least fun and the most unpleasant, that's the one you don't want to go to. You want to skip that class because it sucks. Right?
yeah. Well, and I think it depends a little bit too on the subject,
Well, when we talk about something that sucks, and we both had one teacher named Sifu Sid Lopez, and I know a couple things that really sucked about going to class. No water breaks, lots of push-ups and jumping jacks, learn how to take a punch if you want to give a punch, and the list goes on. But did we keep coming back 2 times a week at 7:30 p.m.?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
In fact, I even went to the Portland school because, the standing rule is, if you're paying for one school, you can go to the other school anytime you want. So it was kind of an extra bonus. So, like you could actually end up getting 5 classes a week if you were able to get to both locations, you know.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
You know,
That's the thing.
so
And you
and
didn't have to pay anymore. You didn't have to pay anymore. And
yeah.
for us, for us, at least for me, I know you trained at the one school on Second and College, but all my days under Sifu Sid were through the Chehalen Park and Rec Community Center, and it was $35 a month for me to train with Sifu Lopez.
Wow.
And I went up to Portland a handful of times. In fact, my orange belt test was in Keith Cox's backyard with a bunch of the Portland school students. So those were people that I trained with a few times off and on prior to that belt test during my first 6 months or whatever it was before I got orange belt. But yeah, it was a lot tougher up there at the Portland school. A lot
Yeah.
tougher. Would you say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, um, you know, I remember training with, Alex Arias and Tim Gagne before he got his black belt, and Dwayne Workman and Ricky Cropper, all those guys before they got their black belts. And it was pretty awesome, you know, training with those guys. I mean, it was intense, you know. Um,
That
you
was a
know,
small little school. I remember those wood paneled walls and that tiny little bathroom and everything. But boy, I got a taste of them. I thought the workouts at the community center were brutal. And then I showed up to the Portland school and thought, man,
yeah.
everything I heard about it before I ever showed up was true.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, and then they would come out to Newburgh too and help sit out and things like that too. And and in fact, I remember a young lady by the name of Becky. She was a purple belt, came out from the Portland school. She had taught me how to keep my elbows down because I was wanting to do this number. She had this wicked side kick that she'd sneak up underneath them elbows. Oh my God. I got some black and blue going on down here, and that's how I learned how to keep my elbows in. When the Portland students come out and whoop my ass, when we were sparring. I mean, we had a lot of space in that Newburgh school, but yeah, all it did was, provide more room to whoop our asses. I
Yeah,
remember
because
we
you
had
could.
those old wrestling mats that you rolled up and you'd put them on the little roller things, right?
Yeah.
And we'd roll them up and we'd push them over in the corner, and Sid would beat our asses, and the floor would get so wet from our sweat, right? That we'd be like on a slip and slide trying to stand around. And that's the time that's when Sid would put us in the freaking horse stance and then have somebody stand on your legs. So, not only are you like trying to hold somebody's weight up, but you're trying to keep your feet from sliding out
Yep.
because the floor is so wet. I mean, it was crazy. But I think that also comes down to a lot of why what we did was so effective, and why the way we fought was so effective is because of the way we trained, which I don't think that a lot of people train that way anymore. And it wasn't anywhere near as bad as what you hear about the old days of KAJUKENBO training in the Palama settlement and all that. It's not finished till there's blood on the floor or whatever you want to say. But it was pretty brutal, you know.
It
Um,
was.
I walked away with some bruises here and there. I don't know if I ever had a black eye from class. I had one or two from a tournament, I think. But we were pretty good about, using control in class because, that was kind of something that Sid would stress on too. Because if you
Well,
hit
well,
somebody,
well,
he'd have you standing
to
against
the
the wall,
face, to
back
the
fisting
face. Yeah.
the wall. And every
Yeah.
time you hit that wall, you'd be like, okay, I'm learning.
Yeah, yeah, we did have the kind of an etiquette with contact to the face, but I know I always had bruised ribs, bruises on my abdomen, bruises on my legs, things like that. But you could cover those with clothing,
Yeah.
and Sifu Lopez always said those are badges of honor, and it was a give and take always, and that was the cool thing. Like I always have to bring up Sifu David Funk because Dave, he taught me a lot, and it was mostly through I'm going to keep hitting you until you learn how to move or block it, you know. And
Yeah.
that was par for the course in those classes. That's how you got up through the ranks, is especially in sparring, is you either got hit or learned how to not get hit, you know.
Yeah.
And that just right there, that basic equation translates right into the topic we're discussing. In a fight, you either get hit or learn how to not get hit. There's plenty of people that don't even do martial arts. Kimbo Slice is a classic example. That guy got into professional fighting and even Hollywood, but he was discovered off of backyard brawls on YouTube. And there's still YouTube channels. There's one that I come across every once in a while, and they even have like uh, their ring has like promotional materials and stuff painted, like spray painted. It's not fancy. It's really just thrown together, and it's like, you know, their website, whatever, a little bit of contact information and the name of the. It's not hitting me off the top of my head because I haven't watched a lot of their stuff, but I'll come across it in my feed, and it's clearly just dudes. There's a crowd around the ring. The ring is like some sort of material that's flexible with like wood posts or something in between it. And they just put two guys in there and they duke it out until one of them can't stand up or gets knocked down, and it's over. And, you know, I wouldn't want to face a guy like that on the street if I didn't know how to deal with violence.
Yeah.
And that guy probably doesn't have any sort of certificate hanging on his wall.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's like you're saying when you're talking about practicing medicine, practicing law, same thing with martial arts. You're practicing martial arts. Okay. We're always learning, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people forget about in the martial arts is just because you have a black belt and you have a certificate on your wall that says you're a black belt doesn't mean that you stop learning. To be honest with you, myself, I've learned more since I started teaching martial arts than I ever learned as a student,
Well,
so
I got to bring up Tuhan Apollo Ladra, uh, one of the two or three guys that I've learned from in the Filipino martial arts. And Tuhan Apollo's motto is learn to teach, teach to learn,
mm,
which again, I love the fact that you just kind of took things in this direction. Um, it really boils down to teaching. Learning and teaching are synonymous, but um, you're either going to learn from a true teacher or someone who might not be qualified to teach, whether it's in a backyard or in a martial arts dojo slash studio slash gym, whatever word you want to slap on that thing. I used to hear the word tossed around KAJUKENBO because a lot of the best KAJUKENBO guys can be found in their own garage. Uh,
yeah,
hell, one guy I want to give a big salute to is Grandmaster Bob Settles. For many years, that gentleman taught out of his garage, and he was hard to find. But he's a
yeah,
gold nugget. He's a gold nugget, and I've posted some of his video clips from Facebook in my Facebook group, and that's just a tiny little taste of what that man has to offer and the skill level that he reached over the year. And I'll tell you what, all his students are some of the most badass dudes I've ever encountered, and they really do live up to what Kajukembo is all about. I mean, remember the old motto, from the street for the street,
yeah,
and long life and happiness through this fist way. Well, through a fighting art, you're going to live long and you're going to be happy because you get home alive.
yeah,
But somebody's got to teach you how to do it, and you have to be willing to learn. And learning isn't always going to be painless and easy, especially in Kajukembo. It's going to be full of pain and full of struggle. It's the exact opposite of easy and painless. And you have to want it because you got to keep coming back for more to get it. And there are achievements you can get, like for instance, your black belt, where you can kind of go, I made it. But there's still going to be pain and struggle after that. And it might change a little bit. For instance, one of the biggest things I think that can be painful for a black belt, if you choose to receive it as pain, is criticism. If you don't know how to deal with it, we both know. I know I've had criticism. You've had criticism. Now, whether it comes from your instructor or it comes from somebody who thinks they can teach you, I don't mind criticism coming from somebody who really cares about teaching you something. But if
Yeah.
somebody's just going to be a flat out asshole and tell you you're doing it wrong, okay, that's fine. Tell me that's wrong, but tell me what you think the right way is,
Yeah.
right? Like Sifu Terry Faircloth says, show me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the first things I do when somebody provides any kind of criticism is I go to look at their channel or their page or whatever to see what the heck they've got to show me. And most of the time, believe it or not, they have zero videos up on their channel. So it's usually somebody who's just talking out their ass, playing Mr. Keyboard Warrior. I'm a badass because I practice talking shit, not martial arts, you know? So if you look at what I'm doing and you think it sucks, that's fine. Tell me about it. Tell me what you think I can do better. I'll try, I'll practice martial arts and I'll
That's
get
right.
better.
That's right. That's the thing, is we're all practicing. We have a license to keep practicing and practice at a higher level. And if we all want to keep reaching higher levels like a tree grows, then we need to be willing to show each other. Now, I get it. I used to have a policy: if this is the weapon and this is the shield and we want to keep our weapon covered, we don't want to share all our skill with the public or whatever. But even if you look at someone doing a Palama set on the video, you can usually see what their skill level is, or at least what they want to show you. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're showing you everything, because they're going to keep some of it hidden. I wouldn't let a spectator come watch one of my classes for more than 15 minutes 3 times. You get 3 times. You can come watch for 10 or 15 minutes for 3 classes. And then if I see you again and you're not signed up, go home. I'm not going to just let somebody come watch for a month for 2 hours a night or whatever, 2 times a week, and
Yeah.
not join, and I never charged a lot. In fact, I lost more money because I would usually offer things like scholarship programs where you could write an essay why you can't afford it, but you still deserve to learn. And I'd give you pants and a t-shirt and sticks and whatever you needed to get started, and let them train for 6 months or a year and never ask for money. But again, my desire was to teach martial arts and help people grow
Yeah.
through learning.
Yeah.
So nowadays, I think the biggest culprit getting in the way, and we know that in regards to rank certification, money has really mucked things up. And I don't care what system it is, when you start selling credentials, then you're selling pieces of paper and pieces of cloth to tie around your waist and hang on your wall. And you're not necessarily ensuring a skill level. For instance, outside of Kajukembo, one art that is notorious for offering these things for money, and they even offer a rank where they use the title master a lot. I don't like that so much. But Taekwondo, I don't want to bash anyone in particular, but a Taekwondo, a general perspective of Taekwondo is you can go pay a certain amount of money, train for a year, and you're a black belt.
Hmm.
Well, that's fine until you go get your ass whooped in a violent encounter.
Yeah.
Then that's going to be the most painful lesson, isn't it?
Well, and that's one of the things that I kind of wanted to get at when we talking about this stuff is there's a lot of people out there that are practicing martial arts or, at least to a certain extent, and got their black belts, got a whole bunch of stripes on them black belts, but yet when they get into a violent encounter, things don't end so well for them, you
Yep.
know. And you and I have both even known people that are probably in Kajukembo that's happened to. But, you know, a lot of it to me, I think the biggest thing to me, and I know I've had a lot of experience, working in bars, working in security situations in the Navy, that kind of thing, where I've actually used my Kajukembo, uh, and it works rather well.
I would interject because, sorry, I'm really good at
Oh.
interrupting. But Not so much. When you mentioned earlier that we might know people in KAJUKENBO that got their ass handed to them in a street
Yeah.
fight, not so much after a certain level. I would say that if I had to talk to a friend, they were a white or an orange belt, and they just didn't know how to use it, and they might have got a bruise or two in a street fight, and then you tell
Yeah.
them, hey, you don't use control in a street fight. You don't pull the punch in a street fight. That was one thing I had to learn.
Yeah. And that's one thing that one of the biggest things that I think that people don't talk about is the difference between what you do in class and what you do in the street. Yeah, Sid used to say if you can control your punch, then you can definitely drive through the face, right? Kind of thing. So, yeah, in class, I don't want to be beating you up and I don't want to knock your teeth out, right? But when I'm out in town, the converse is true. Okay. When somebody attacks me, okay, I want to punch through his face. I want him to feel the full effect of every blow that I give. The mindset, right? And you hear all these people say, "Well, Coach Kimbo's a mindset." Okay, well, what the hell does that mean? And I think that's really the drive of what people are looking at is the animal instinct that Kaja Kimbo kind of instills in its students. For the most part, like what you said, is a very true statement right from the get-go in Kimbo at orange belt, purple belt level, you're kicking ass. You go to a tournament, you could probably take on a black belt in another style. And that's to me is kind of sad because, an orange belt in Kimbo's got 6 months to a year, you know,
I
and
I hear you. I hear you.
you know, they can take somebody on at a much higher level.
Well, it's changed a little bit over the years and decades that we've been in Kajukembo, but I think when I first started, it was 5 to 7 years, is what I was told it would take a person to get a black belt, depending on how hard they train. And now I would say people are going to tell you 3 to 5 years because um, the training process has sped up or been condensed or whatever it is. I don't think a lot of schools have compromised to be able to shave off 2 or 3 years of, from 7 down to 5 or whatever. I think 3 might even be adequate if someone's working really hard 2 or 3 nights a week and training on their own. But again, it's we only give a guesstimation. If a student comes, another thing I like to tell them is it's going to take you so many hours for this belt, so many hours for that belt. And after I started training in Kogaha Kosho Shoryu with Hanchi Asan, the Mitose system, there's no belts. There's a Kirikami, Mokuroku, and Menkyo Sensei, and there's so many hours for each level. And there's a ledger. I started using a ledger in my school where you had to come sign in. You put your name on there, the time you showed up, and you sign out when you're done. That way, there's no way to refute the evidence because a lot of times I would have students object, if I didn't invite them to pre-test workouts, because we'd always have pre-test workouts like, are you ready? Here's a taste of it. Uh, or invite them to test. Well, how come I can't test Sifu? Well, let's look at the ledger. You don't have 33 hours. You're not ready for your orange belt or your yellow belt or whatever your first level is. The first level for me was 33 hours of mat time. If you don't have 33 hours, you're not testing. And it goes up from there. It goes up from there. Now they add together. If it's 66 for the next one, well, you already got 33 when you earned your orange. So now you need another 33, right? Now you got your 66 because you should be twice as good. It should take you half the time to learn what you learned for orange belt when you go for your purple belt because you already have a foundation. It takes a lot harder work to pour a foundation of concrete than it does to start putting up the framing, that stick framing for the house, right?
Mm.
When you think about construction, it equates to martial arts. It gets less cumbersome and it's not as hard a work after you finish the foundation. Things are a lot faster. You go drive by a construction site, you're going to see that foundation sit out there for a while, and all the pre, like the rebar, the framing of the cement foundation. You're going to see all that take quite a while. And then all of a sudden, framing goes up, electrical, drywall, all that stuff gets put in fast. Roof goes on, that
Yeah.
sucker's ready, right? And that's how it is with the martial arts. It builds on itself. But anyway, most people, and even like you and I, we can say, well, we've been doing it for X amount of years. That hasn't always been consistent for, I wasn't doing it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 39 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But I did it this many hours per level of skill that I achieved, for each color belt level and each level of black belt. And so we can say, I always say, somebody goes, how long have you been doing martial arts? I've been involved with martial arts for nearly 2 decades or whatever, or 4 decades, but I have this many hours of mat time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, how long have you been a scientist? Oh, 30 years, but I've only had 1,000 hours in the lab, right?
Yeah.
So, and then again, um, pressure testing. Like, let's just take punch counters in KAJUKENBO. Some have 21, some have 26. It'll vary between schools. But I was sitting in the dojo one day, and one of my black belts showed up early, and he goes, "Hey, Sifu." I said, "What?" He goes, "I've been thinking about these punch counters, and I like them, but how many of them do you think are actually going to work on the street?" And I go, "Well, that's a good question. What do you think we should do about that?" He goes, "Well, maybe we should pressure test them." And I said, "I guess we're going to put the mouthpieces in and put the
Yeah.
gloves on. And that way we could punch at each other and we would dance around. We would take it to like a sparring level, because what happens is you got an ambush, and if you can't successfully defend against the ambush, then you might have to dance with the guy a little bit. If something doesn't connect right, then you might find yourself sparring a little bit to shut this thing down. And so an ambush and a fight are two different things. If I'm aware and I'm well prepared and I execute properly against a sucker punch coming at me from the right side in a crowded bar, and I'm sitting there with the drink or whatever, or some guy jumps around the corner and just throws a punch at me, and I move and I block or whatever, and I counterattack, then if I do that successfully, I end the violence right after the ambush. But if things don't play out the way that they should, then we might have to tussle a little bit before we can get through that. And I'm either going to get my ass handed to me, or I'm going to go home in one piece.
Some of this has sounded kind of familiar. You'll probably see some of that in another video I just made, where we talked a little bit about some of that stuff. But that's, one of the things is you may get hit 4 or 5 times before you even realizing you're getting attacked. That's the ambush for you, You walk around a corner and somebody sucker punches you and keeps coming at you, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh wait, you're trying to hurt me, you know, and then now it's time to react, but you already got stuck 4 or 5 times. Better hope that's not a blade, you
Yeah.
know. So that's where situational awareness comes into play, right? And I talked a little bit about that in my last video as well. A lot of people like to say, well, situational, that's bullshit. No, it's not, because if you don't see it coming and it's a knife, guess what? It's too late. You just got sewing machined and you got about 15 freaking holes in your chest, and you're losing fluid quickly, you know. So I mean, there's a lot of things that come into play, and that's one of the things I think that a lot of schools fail to teach their students, is how to be aware of your surroundings, read people, understand, when you see a group of youngins over there, looking for trouble, that they're looking for trouble, you know, or what have you, paying attention to the neighborhood that you're in. Pay attention to how neighborhoods change over the blocks that you're walking through, Not everybody's got the life experience of a sailor, You know, I've been to, Hong Kong, Thailand, Singapore, Japan, Korea, the Middle East, Muscat, Oman. I've been to Kuwait, uh, Australia, all over the world, So I've seen a good mixture of the good and bad across the world, and that's one of those things, where um, not all those areas have been good areas, and generally speaking, anytime you're anywhere near Navy facilities, military type facilities, usually it's a bad area. They're not put in the most savory parts of town, you know. Um, so you're just learning to read people, read, body language, read situations, knowing when to turn around and walk the other way, or across the street, put some distance between you and that group of, thugs that you're seeing as you're coming up on them. You ain't got to be Billy Badass and walk by everybody and puff your chest out, Be a little smart about things as well, And I think that a lot of people too, when they get into martial arts, they get that bravado, where, I'm a tough guy. I know how to fight. I ain't got to worry about it. And then they end up getting their asses kicked because they take on three or four guys who got street smarts, and all you've ever done is go to tournaments. There's a big difference between sports martial arts and street martial arts, folks. I don't give a shit what everybody likes to say. Well, if you can do MMA, then you can fight in the streets. Really? Because when's the last time you saw somebody pull a knife out in the middle of a UFC match? You know? When's the last time you saw the referee just turn around and not watch and be like, nope, don't see nothing here. Oh, he's passed out, but he's still hitting him.
Yeah, he's bleeding to death, but I'm not going to watch.
No, there's a referee. There's a time limit. You both know you're going into combat.
Yeah, there's gear, there's protective gear. And you brought up the good, the bad, and don't forget there's the ugly, because talking about getting that sewing machine and
Yeah.
anything from the ears forward, we can see that coming. Anything from the ears back, that's the worst kind of ambush or anything altercation, because you don't see it coming. You might sense it because your intuition is up, but um, that's the scariest place to get attacked from, is where you can't see it coming. Um, yeah, and then another thing that came up in my head when you were talking is somebody attacks you and they're coming at you and you get hit 3 or 4 or 5 times before you realize it's on, like Donkey Kong. Oops, I got to use my skill. Well, people will sometimes look at KAJUKENBO and go, why are there so many follow-up techniques? Why are you hitting them so much? Well, okay, one and done is nice. Everyone likes one and done, but you don't always get the luxury of one and done. So I really like the fact that KAJUKENBO, whether you're training in a traditional style or more progressive style, there's always a plentiful supply of follow-up techniques being offered to you in class. We teach, once you start hitting, you don't stop. It's like Joe used to say, um, you know, block them and then give them the works and put them away. And like Sifu Tim used to call that par, stun, put away. You par or you parry and you block it, whatever, you redirect, whatever you're going to do. You deal with the first attack and then you stun them and then you counterattack the hell out of them until they're down. And whether they're awake or not, that's irrelevant, because you want to get the hell out of there. And if they're not awake, that's a better chance for you to run, and they're not going to come after your ass.
Yeah.
So, and that experience you had traveling in the Navy is a great experience, because you get to see different cultures with different laws and different behaviors and how people operate. Working as a bouncer, I've done that. You've done that. That was some of the most educational experience I've ever had in human behavior, and how people behave before that leads up to the violent encounter, and then how they behave during the violent encounter, and how they behave afterward if they're still awake. You know,
Yeah.
um,
And that might be one of the reasons why I'm so good at reading people is from just the experience as a bouncer.
That's
You know,
that's there's something to be said about that.
you
Something
know.
to be said about that.
I mean, I'll tell you what, too, in Thailand, you go to a bar in Thailand, they've got rings in the bar.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the things they tell you during your port brief before you pull into Thailand is uh no matter how much martial arts you think you know, don't get into the Muay Thai ring at the bar.
Yeah.
Right? And you'd be surprised how many dumbasses did that. And I'm proud to say, not this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Muay
I thought
Thai.
about it, but I didn't
Yeah,
do it.
that's good. That's
Um,
smart thinking there, Sifu, because a Muay Thai fighter is one of the most well-conditioned, toughest son of a gun guys you're ever gonna, or gals. I've known a few women who have the bravery and the courage and the toughness to get in to the Muay Thai fighters circle and maybe even take that into cage fight, because that's a great way to be a cage
yeah.
fighter. If you can fight Muay Thai, you're probably going to do well in an octagon.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of one gal right off the top of my head, and that's one tough woman. You wouldn't want to. I know she would put to shame some of the guys that I would consider really tough, and they would probably consider themselves tougher until they come across a girl like that. I mean, could you imagine thinking you're Mr. Johnny Badass and you get it handed to you by a woman like that? And especially if they're a good-looking woman and you hit on them the wrong way and they put you in your place fast. So those gals do exist out there, gentlemen. And I mean, biologically we all have our differences, but I have met a few ladies over the years that I wouldn't want to mess with them because they trained hard, they toughened their bodies, and they toughened their minds, and they have the fortitude mentally and physically to kick ass. and
Yeah. And
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 if they have to,
and
they will.
that's really the key with, with the Muay Thai fighters in Thailand. That's why they were such formidable opponents, is because that's what they do to survive. That's their job, right? Is they fight in the rings, and entertain the tourists, right? And that's what they do to survive, right? And that's also how they train, right? To prepare themselves for competitions, you know. Um, so they're used to getting hit. They're used to them, elbow strikes, knee strikes, all that
Well,
nasty stuff that we do in KAJUKENBO for close-in fighting. Um, but they do it with no gloves.
yeah, and they'll do it to a level that um, others just don't reach. Like for instance, something a Muay Thai fighter, and there's other fighters out there that do this, but Muay Thai is really famous for leg conditioning, especially the shins. And I'm sure every one of us has seen a UFC video or two where some guy with unconditioned shins throws a leg kick and hits someone with more conditioned legs and they break their own shin. Well, chances are a Muay Thai fighter who's well conditioned in the shins is not going to have that problem versus somebody who hasn't conditioned their shin. I mean, I'm thinking of one that I've, it just never leaves my head. Guy throws this leg kick and it just breaks his own shin on the other guy's leg or whatever, and just tries to replant his foot down, and the leg just crumbles. And Muay Thai fighters, that's if they're conditioning properly, that's just not going to happen. And not everybody conditions like that. Now, I've met karate guys and seen videos of karate guys, and they do enough conditioning on the forearms and on the shins where they can stay in one piece. If they're throwing a strike against like a wooden dummy or somebody with stronger limbs, or they're throwing a kick against a stronger shin, or if you throw the shin kick, you throw a shin kick and it makes contact with someone doing a knee raise or something, and whatever is going to cause your shin to break. But
Yeah.
if the right amount of conditioning over a consistent period of time, like a Muay Thai fighter, is going to reduce, if not eliminate, that risk. It's just like knuckles in karate. You do enough conditioning or iron palm, and you're going to be able to break through whatever you're hitting, whether it's a board, a stack of boards, a brick, a stack of bricks, or a skull.
Mm. Or block of ice, right, Steve?
Well, you might break a bone in your hand if you hit that block of ice incorrectly, but yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as long as you're not doing that iron crotch training, we'll be okay.
Yeah, you want to stay away from that stuff, don't you?
But I just realized something too. I have no idea how long we've been on this call, because
Um,
I set it for 20 or 37. I don't know. I screwed it up. I got like
it's all right.
hours and minutes messed up. So,
It's all right. I know you can clip it. We're
oh yeah.
at 40 minutes, give or take. So
So,
we could end on that. We could do an ending. I would like to say I did not ever sign up for iron crotch training. I did a fair amount of iron palm training, and I did get fairly decent at ice breaking. At one point, I was able to punch through 6 inches of solid ice, and I would just make these. I would take this Tupperware container, put water in it, put it in the freezer, and my mom was always like, "Get that damn thing out of my freezer," and I'd say, "Okay, tomorrow I'll break it, and then I'll put another one in." You know, so I had to negotiate for a certain shelf in the garage freezer toward the bottom, and then uh,
uh,
and then I would do a lot of iron palm throughout the week, and then punch that ice. And eventually, I got up to 6 inches. I started with 1 inch, and then I went to two, and then I kept going. I got through 6 inches, but then yes, I did break a bone in my right hand when I. And it's funny because I might as well tell the story now. I went to the ER in Newberg, Oregon, and all the nurses were like, "This guy's a fool, man. What was he doing?" And then the doctor came out and he goes, "Who's your Sifu?" And I go, "Sifu Sid Lopez." "Who's your Sifu?" And he goes, "Sifu Fred King."
ah,
I go, "Oh yeah." He goes, "Yeah, one day Sifu Fred asked us to, he was getting ready to remodel the dojo and he asked us to tear down a wall. And he said, go ahead and use your kicks and punches to tear that wall down." And he punched through some sheetrock and he had a stud. And pretty much he said he broke the same bone. I broke the ring finger of the right hand. There's still, you can feel it. If somebody ran their thumb across my hand, you can feel where it was broken. Boy, that sucker swelled up in seconds flat. My stepdad said, "Don't tell your mom what you did." I go, "Well, she's going to find out when we get back because I think it's going to be in a cast or something."
yeah.
And yeah, they wrapped it up. They taped these two fingers together and tied it all up and everything. But yeah, and I got to thank Sifu Sid Lopez for all the skill, and also there's a book that I'm not sure if you can find it anymore. How to Break a Brick in 100 Days, and it was by James Yim Lee and Grandmaster Al Novak. And back in the day, it's not a very big book. It was only like $9.95, but it taught me everything else on top of what Sifu Sid taught me to be able to break that ice. I never did try to break bricks, but if I would have followed the instructions from Sifu Sid and Grandmaster
Uh,
Novak from the book. Um, I was following the instructions from Sifu Lopez and Sifu Novak to break a brick. And I even heard from Sifu Lopez about what Grandmaster Gaylord could do with brick breaking. Now, I will say, uh, Sifu Novak in the book and Sifu James Yim Lee, they would hold the brick with one hand or not, and then they were usually chopping it. Okay, but you could also learn how to punch through stuff, and that was kind of where I asked Sifu Lopez. I told him because if anybody has seen it on like the Tonight Show or Jay Leno or whatever. Grandmaster Sam Kuoha, the predecessor to William Kwai-Sun Chow, he used to climb a ladder and just break a stack of all these huge pieces of ice. And I saw that as a teenager or something. And I met Grandmaster Sam Kuoha later in life. And he was really nice and generous with his time, talking to me about all those things, the experiences of training and leading up to that, going on those TV shows and doing it. Really nice guy. And if you look on YouTube, I'm sure you can find that video clip of Sam Kuoha. I'll try to find it and send it to you. And he'd climb up this ladder and just, I think a lot of times he'd use an elbow and he'd come down on that stack and he'd break it all. And so I told Sifu Lopez I wanted to learn how to do Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch on 4 or 5 inches of ice. And so through the book and through instruction from Sifu Lopez, and actually Sigung Gabe Vargas helped with a little bit of that knowledge, because when I went down and met him in 92, he gave me a couple pointers on his front porch. And so it wasn't long after I met Sigung Vargas that I did it. That's how I broke my hand. I did what's called the double tap technique. And my stepdad was holding, he had towels and shit, and he was holding this thing of ice. And then I had my hand up there, and I had one finger out, and then I would just punch. And the double tap was you go once and then you go again. And I went pop, pop, but my hand also went pop, right? There was a little tiny pop in my hand that I could even hear inside my eardrum, because you can hear a broken bone happen in your body. And boy, it started swelling up. But the ice all broke. And my stepdad goes, "Damn, boy, that was pretty nice." And I went, "Ow, shit, Dad." And he goes, "Oh, that doesn't look good. It's swelling up already. I think you broke something. Let's go to the doctor." So, yeah, anyway, if you can find that book will show you how to break just about anything you want up to the brick level.
Mm.
And it can be done. And
Yeah.
I did practice for 100 days before I started trying to break shit. But I wasn't trying to break bricks. I was just trying to be another Iceman, another icebreaker. I think if I had any closing remarks, I started out with it, and I'll say it again. Skill beats rank any day of the week. And if I was going to make a poem or a haiku out of that, if you don't understand how skill beats rank, and all you do is trust your rank, then you might get your ass beat. And then you're going
Yeah.
to know what beat means, you know? So skill beats rank. And some guys out there with no rank have the skill to beat your ass if you're a black belt without the skill that you should have. That's one thing I have to say about Kajukembo. Maybe not always true in the kids levels, because teaching kids is a lot different. But in Kajukembo, we always taught kids to get ready for adult class. It was preparation for adult class. And that's where the real spankings come from, is the adult class. But that's the thing, is Kajukembo is a give and take martial art. I know both of us probably have countless stories of, like I said, you either get hit or learn how to not get hit and how to hit back. And so you don't necessarily need a certificate or a belt to have the skill. So there's guys out there that could hand your butt to you any day of the week. And so situational awareness, I think, is really important in how to avoid violence. And then understanding our own movement gives us a better understanding of how to observe movement in others.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well,
I
and I
could
think there's a thing too, and a kind of a trend that I've noticed in martial arts, at least since I've got started teaching and whatnot, and something I've noticed about a lot of people that are, especially the guys that are really into ranks, kind of thing, is there's people that I like to call um, certificate chasers, you know, or those guys that like to trade certificates with other people. So it's kind of like, well, I'm a black belt in Kajukembo. I've also got a black belt in this and 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 this. And it's like, okay, people, if you run into somebody who's got 10 different black belts, be wary of that school. Okay, that's all I could say because it takes time to get a black belt and to master a martial art, right? Especially when you got some guy that's 30 years old and he's telling you he's a ninth degree black belt in something. I would kind of think that that might be an indicator for you to say, hmm, you know, let me see what you got. Pay attention, okay? Because that skill level might not be there. And for a novice, sometimes that's hard to do, to tell because I mean somebody's got a black belt looks pretty doggone good to a novice. Okay, but if you've got any experience in martial arts, you can kind of tell that somebody's, not at the grandmaster level, kind of thing.
Well, I can tell you, I've met guys. Now I've been blessed. I've been fortunate that I ended up connecting with different instructors in Kajukembo, Koshoru Kempo, Hoshin Jutsu. So I have 4 certificates to my name and I have an honorary membership. Now, my honorary membership doesn't mean I have any skill in that system. It just means I hung around long enough and I became part of the family. But I have 3 black belts, one in Kajukembo, one in Koshoru Kempo, and one in Hoshin Jutsu. All of those took me about 10 years each to earn. And I earned them because I had to train to earn them. It's not like I just paid $1,000 and got one. And then I got a Hagdan Isa and Kali from Tuhana Paulo. But that's just, it was to teach kids. It's a Kali for kids rank, but he said if you can teach a kid, you can teach an adult. And so I was granted permission to be able to teach adults the same things I was teaching the kids. And he said, if anyone has a problem with that, tell them to talk to me. So I appreciate everything all those instructors did for me to help me learn and share their art with me. But there was a lot of hard work involved with all of those. And 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 the 3 black belt certificates I got, once again, those were all about 10 years worth of learning. And whether you call me slow and stupid, I don't care. I took my time. I took my time because I wasn't in a hurry. And when you were talking about paper chasers, another word we use is paper tiger. That's another
Yeah.
term. And I didn't want to be a paper tiger. So I figured I don't care. When I'm done with this, I can tell people it took 10 years. Call me stupid or call me a slow learner. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I am, but I actually was kind of more like uh, smell the roses and patch up the bruises along the way. I mean, I wanted to make sure I got it right. And even when I came in the WWKF, I was looking for a new home, not a promotion. I told Senior Grandmaster Jimenez, leave me at 3rd degree. I don't care about being promoted. And that was the only promotion that I have not done training for, to prepare for, to earn. But anything above 3rd or 4th degree is going to be based on how you give back to the art anyway, whether you're running 10 schools, whether you're doing a podcast with your buddy to help the world learn about the reality of martial arts, whatever. You're doing something to give back to the art. People can criticize, they can say whatever. We both know what time we've put in, what effort we've put in, what skill levels we've reaped. Both of us have a background in being a bouncer for various
Yeah.
portions of our lives. You probably did it longer than me, but I'll tell you what, there's nothing more reassuring than seeing the skills that you learned in the dojo work in a situation like that. Amen. And I mean, that's kind of a little bit of like a street fighter. You'd call it barroom brawling, but I mean,
Yeah.
you got a shirt that says staff on it or on the back or whatever. It's a little different because you work there. You're not just
Yeah.
getting drunk and starting a fight,
Well, you
right?
get away with it too. I mean, because you can do whatever you wanted.
To a certain degree, to a certain
Yeah.
degree.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
you don't want to bloody up the customer anyway because you want them to come back and spend more money later. But you know, uh, you might kick them
yeah,
out for a couple weeks, 30 days, something like that. But eventually they'll come back in.
one of the toughest bars I worked in, the 2 senior supervisors I noticed had knives clipped to their belt or in their pocket, and none of the rest of us. I thought we weren't all supposed to be able to carry a knife, but I caught two of the guys one time and I said, "Hey, how come you get to wear that clip on and I can't wear a clip on?" But I did use Kelly Warden's travel wrench, the Impact Karambit. I gave you one or two of those.
Yeah.
And I did use Datu Kelly Warden's Impact Karambit travel wrench in the bouncer industry for uh, the whole time that I did it. It wasn't the longest run. It's not like I got a couple friends who did bouncer work for 5-10 years. I didn't even come close to that. It was less than a year for me, but that was all I needed. I just needed some money and I wanted to see how well I could fare in that type of environment. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you that travel wrench came in real handy. It's not a bladed weapon. It's even TSA approved. You can take it through TSA because it's got hex nut holes in it. And you just say, "I tighten my bike tires with this thing." It's a travel wrench, and it doesn't look like a weapon, but boy, it's a nice equalizer. It works real well to equalize any
Yeah.
violent encounter. Anyway, we just go on forever and ever if we could. And
Yeah.
I think all that's worth sharing. And I don't know if those were necessarily closing remarks because I keep going off on a tangent and then I bring you into it. But again, skill beats rank. Skill beats rank.
Yeah.
Um, and training should reflect uh, reality of violence to a certain degree. Like punch counters are great. Some schools call them alphabets or whatever. And that's true. Parker used to talk about an alphabet teaches you words, words teach you sentences, sentences become paragraphs. Then you can write a whole book. Well, whether you're writing music or whether you're writing a book or whether you're learning how to fight with an endless repertoire of tools at your disposal, like you said in the beginning, we're practicing martial arts. A doctor has a license to practice medicine, a lawyer has a license to practice law. So that's why I never liked the use of the word master or the title master in Korean martial arts, because just because a dude has a piece of paper and a cloth, the black piece of cloth around his waist, doesn't mean he's mastered shit.
Yeah.
He might have mastered getting his ass kicked and someone still let him open a dojo, right? Because he looks good on paper, quote
Yeah.
unquote. But what we do with all those tools in Kajukembo or any decent martial art is you practice using them in a variety of situations so that hopefully if you're ever faced with some certain situation that hits you off guard, that you can respond, recover, and turn the tables, and then don't stop until the other guy's knocked out cold.
Yeah.
And if you got to break an arm in the process to get home alive, tough shit for that guy. I guess he
Yeah.
won't ever forget you, right?
Well, we call that, developing muscle memory, just reacting to the situation. You've been through that so many times during your training, and when it happens, you just react, and the other thing you're talking about, don't stop till you're finished. I like to call that violence of action. Okay. Where essentially, one thing sets up the next thing, and, you don't stop until you've incapacitated your opponent. He's on the ground, you do a little shoe job on him, like Cesar used to call it, and you finish him off. You walk away, get the hell out of there before the cops show up, especially in today's society, you know, you know,
Let me
but
uh, let me add two closing remarks because it might pave the way for one of our future talks. You kind of touched on it just now too. There's phases to training: phase one, phase two, phase three. I know you've mentioned it in previous episodes, and like I said, this might pave the way to further discussion on that topic. And the more you learn how the three phases work in your own training and when you deploy tools in a violent encounter, then you can get to a level that I always used to teach my students. I don't know how many times you've heard this, but don't fight unless you have to. And if you do, make it look like an accident. I mean, you can get good enough at phase three where you run that billiard table or you run that chessboard of the violent encounter to where you set a guy up to really defeat himself, to undo himself. and then it looks like you really didn't do much of anything, especially the way you're angled to a spectator or a witness, because a spectator becomes a witness when the cops show up. So does a
Yeah.
closed circuit TV camera. And if you have situational awareness, cell phones all over the place, man. So the more you can avoid a fight, the better. And if you got to fight, try to make it look like an accident, or like this is a lot better way to start off than this. This, hey, don't hurt me. You know, looks like you're praying. Yeah, yeah. So all those little things. But anyway, I think that's probably a good note to end on, if you agree. And you got anything else to close it? Because you started it, or do you just want me to finish it?
Well, I usually don't, let somebody else finish because, that usually means I got my ass kicked. So, with that said, mahalo.
Mahalo.